Hello everyone, welcome to Group 11 presentation. We are Jennifer, McGill, Asob, and Chioma. Today we will be talking about learning to compete in a transition economy with respect to environmental factors like experience, environment, and performance. Our focus today will be measuring the organizational learning by performance and host country experience of MNEs at the business levels. We'll also be understanding the impact of the complex and multi-dimensional relationships among the environmental forces, that is experience, performance, and environment, in a transition economy such as China. We'll be exploring the effect of intensity and diversity of the host country experience on expansion performance. We'll also discuss the methods, analysis, and results of the Palgrave Macmillan paper. Lastly, we're going to tie it up with a local firm in Canada. What is organizational learning? So, organizations learn if any of its units acquires knowledge that is that is seen potentially useful to the organization. The writer indicates that learning by doing is one of the most important sources of organizational learning. Multinational expansion can be regarded as an option window, permitting MNEs to gain more tacit knowledge of a host country. Therefore, accumulated knowledge helps the firm overcome its initial concerns about foreign operations while reducing operational uncertainties and enhancing performance. The host country's specific knowledge is a driving force behind international expansion performance because such knowledge cannot be easily acquired. MNEs who have spent time in a host country may acquire a significant competitive advantage compared to firms which are not in that country. Such knowledge and experience can be considered as an ownership-specific, intangible asset which can generate economic rent.
This section focuses on the theory and the hypothesis of the topic, learning to compete in a transition economy. The theory and hypothesis are subdivided into three sections that analyzes the key objective of the study, which include organizational learning and multinational expansion, experience and performance, and lastly, experience, environment, and performance. Organizational learning and multinational expansion. The study reveals that organizations learn if any of its units acquire knowledge that it recognizes as potentially useful to the organization. March, one of the contributing authors to the study on organizational learning, highlights two sources of organizational learning, which includes exploration and exploitation. Although both learning sources are important, the study, however, highlights learning by doing as one of the most important sources of organizational learning. Learning by doing. If an organization wants to be well-versed in the tacit aspect of knowledge, it therefore needs to remember by doing. To acquire tacit knowledge, multinational firms need to gain experience of their host country of operations, as lack of knowledge can pose as an obstacle to their multinational expansion. The concept of multinational expansion therefore provides enterprises an option window to gain more tacit knowledge of their host country. The purpose of the option window gives businesses the opportunity to test the waters by investing in small capital in the host country and expanding further as it acquires more positive developments. Such incremental steps can be regarded as real options or learning options as multinational organizational learning expands through their experience abroad. Such experience gained can increase the multinational opportunity to explore or exploit various options that are more specific to their capabilities. Model of multinational expansion addresses the key importance of learning in international expansion. The model suggests that the greatest obstacle multinational firms can encounter is the lack of knowledge, and for them to overcome this, they need to acquire the necessary knowledge needed to survive in the environment, which can only be done through experience abroad. Through acquiring host country specific knowledge, firms that have prior knowledge of its host country through learning by doing have a competitive advantage compared to firms that are not in the country, as they have knowledge that is not easily attainable. Both experience and knowledge gained thus gives the firm ownership advantage, which can reduce their liability of foreigners and therefore result to economic gains. As the study reveals that there is a positive correlation with ownership advantage and international expansion. Experience and performance. On the second objective, the paper focuses on the country-specific experience in relation to the performance of multinational enterprises in China. It explains that experience is linked to the intensity of experience and diversity of experience multinational firms have in the host country. That is, the amount of time firms have spent operating in the host country and the participation level of which the firms operate. Intensity of exposure. Hypothesis 1A states that among multinational enterprises subunits in a transition economy, the intensity of experience will be positively related to performance. This suggests that the longer time spent in a host country would enable firms to increase and develop their market presence in the local market of the host country, thereby allowing them to establish long local partnerships and increase their profitability. For example, in China, a multinational firm's ability to establish a long-term presence in the country gains the firm a favorable image amongst the local stakeholders. Due to the informal constraints of the country, chances of success in China are boosted by wide connections with local businesses and government authorities because China have a strong relationship culture. A firm's inability, therefore, to cultivate these relationships may lead to less opportunities to exploit the local environment of the country. Diversity of experience. This brings us to another factor of experience. Organizational learning suggests that diversity of experience is also positively related to performance, as stated in hypothesis 1B. The level and capability of which firms can operate in diverse circumstances by increasing their market presence in more than one region or conducting business with various amounts of buyers and customers increases their knowledge base of the host country, which in turn reduces their liability of foreigners and increases their opportunities for exploration. The expansion process model reveals the adverse effect between experience and performance in the long run. Hypothesis 2A states that among multinational enterprise subunits in a transition economy, the positive effect of intensity of experience on performance will diminish but still be positive as this intensity increases. This is due to the familiar knowledge multinational firms gain over time, as local environment may not seem complex enough to challenge innovation and exploitation. Hypothesis 2B states that among multinational enterprise subunits in transition economy, the positive effect of the diversity of experience on performance will diminish, but still be positive as this diversity increases. This may be due to other foreign firms' attempt to increase their own organizational learning in the host country to increase their profitability and market share in the transition economy. The last objective focuses on the experience, environment, and performance. The paper reveals that a multinational firm's experience and performance can be moderated by the organizational environment of a host country. It advises firms to be attentive to uncertain environmental forces that may affect its operation in a host country, as such uncertainties may cause learning capabilities to be ineffective. Empirical studies therefore reveals three dimensions of organizational environment, which are hostility, dynamism, and complexity. Hostility. In a transition economy, the institutional framework may be quite weak, as multinational firms may be subjected to a weak regulatory system, underdeveloped factor markets, and poorly protected property rights, which in turn can create a hostile environment for foreign firms. However, the paper shows that there is a positive correlation between intensity of experience and performance, as well as a relationship between diversity and performance when multinational firms are faced with greater environmental hostility, as stated in hypothesis 3A and 3B. Dynamism. A firm's ability to survive in a dynamic environment in the long run can increase the performance and growth of the firm, as firms are able to find more opportunities for exploration and exploitation, which in turn increases its survival and growth in the host country, as stated in hypothesis 4A and 4B. Complexity. The paper suggests that if a firm can understand and adapt in a more complex external environment, its learning capabilities and tactic knowledge will improve, as it may be able to develop more innovative ideas to explore or exploit the local environment it operates in, which in turn would make it difficult for other foreign firms to easily imitate, as revealed in hypothesis 5A and 5B.
In this research, methodology covers the four areas. First, research setting. Second, data collection. Third, variables and measurement. Fourth, analytical approach. Research setting. This research focuses on the organizational learning of multinational enterprise in China. China was chosen as a viable research option for several reasons. First, despite China becoming the world's second largest FDI recipient after the United States in the 1990s, little information is known about the operations and performance of multinational in transition economies. Second, China has absorbed a lot of foreign investment over the past 2 decades. The M&E business in China is more sophisticated in both size and scope, allowing them to consider the range of experience available. Third, China's environment continues to pose significant challenges to multinational companies and provide an ideal setting for assessing the direct and mitigating effects of environmental impacts on the multinational company's performance. Data collection. Two data collection techniques were followed. The first was survey. The results through the survey exhibited high consistency between verbal reports and written answers. The second was the interview and the questionnaire. In this, it was the unpaired t-test and the Kolmogorov-Smirnov's d-deviation of the frequency distribution were calculated for non-response bias, and both tests revealed non-significant results. Variables and measurement had four divisions. The first, experience. The test conducted examined intensity and diversity of host country specific experience relevant to the firm's performance. Cronbach's A coefficient was used to test its reliability that suggested an adequate internal consistency. The second, environment. There we examined three environmental dimensions: hostility, dynamics, complexity using the Cronbach's A coefficient. The results indicated a reasonable internal consistency of all constituents. The third, performance. The performance of M&E subunits was measured. Principal component factor analysis was used for all dimensions that suggested that all four dimensions were important aspects of performance. The last, control variable. Composite index was calculated under the multinational expansion process model. Under the analytical approach, moderate multiple regression was used to examine the modulating effect of the environment on experience efficiency association. Further, to validate the approach, variance inflation coefficient of independent variable was examined. Results revealed a low threat of multicollinearity for each variable. Maneuver test was also performed to determine the multivariate effect of experience on the overall performance of the respondents. Certain other tests were also done, but ultimately maneuver test was considered the most appropriate one.
Table 2 looks at the results for H1. In Model 1, we see that the intensity of experience is positively related to all major aspects of firm performance, namely return on sales, return on equity, sales position, and competitive adjust. The MANOVA result demonstrates that the intensity of experience significantly impacts the overall performance of multinational enterprise subunits. H1 is thus supported. Similarly, the diversity of experience has a profound and positive influence on return on sales, return on equity, sales position, and competitive position, and is important for a firm's overall performance. This evidence lends support to H1B. Therefore, both the intensity and diversity of experience constitute an important driving force underlying high performance in a complex and uncertain environment. In Model 2, the quadratic effect of the intensity of experience on financial returns, return on sale, return on equity, is significantly negative, and respectively, this means that the positive effect of the intensity of experience, as measured by the length of operations, declines over time in an inverted U-shaped fashion. The quadratic effects of length of experience and market performance indicators such as sales and competitive positions are, however, statistically non-significant, suggesting that the positive impact of the intensity of experience on sales and competitive positions remains linear over time. Thus, the positive effect of experience intensity only diminishes in relation to financial returns as this intensity increases. The positive relationship between this intensity and market performance is unabated over time. H2A is only partially supported. The quadratic effects of diversity of experience on return on sales and return on equity are positive but not significant. This demonstrates that the positive effects of the diversity of experience do not diminish over time. In other words, the relationship between the diversity of experience and profitability seems to remain linear regardless of the stage of internationalization. This then implies that additional experience in terms of diversity but not intensity in the late stage of foreign operations has the same strong and positive influence on profitability as does such experience in the early stage of international expansion. The findings thus imply that the contributions of diversity of experience to performance are sustained longer than those of intensity of experience. Thus, diverse and active interactions with the local environment seem to be more important than the length of operations if MNEs are pursuing long-term performance in the local market. H2B is therefore not supported. Focusing on H3 to 5, models 1 to 3, table 3 respectively, assess the moderating effect of environment on the relationship between experience and performance. In Model 1, environmental hostility significantly interacts with experience variables intensity and diversity, which is important for performance measures. Specifically, the interaction between the intensity of experience and environmental hostility is positively related to return on sales and sales per asset. Similarly, the interaction between the diversity of experience and environmental hostility is positively associated with return on sales and return on equity and competitive position. This suggests that when environmental hostility is high, there is a stronger positive relationship between experience and performance. In other words, an MNE's experience with respect to both intensity and diversity is more valuable to international expansion outcomes when environmental hostility is higher. H3A and H3B are thereby supported. As shown in Model 2, environmental dynamism itself is not significantly associated with performance measures. Its interaction with the diversity of experience, however, has a significant and positive effect on all four performance indicators, namely return on sales, return on equity, sales per asset, and competitive position. This demonstrates that environmental dynamism as a pure moderator facilitates the experience effect on performance. H4B is therefore supported. On the other hand, dynamism's interaction with the intensity of experience does not influence any financial or market outcomes, suggesting that it does not facilitate the positive relationship between the intensity of experience and performance. Hence, H4A is rejected. In Model 3, environmental complexity interacts with the intensity of experience. This interaction has a positive influence on multinational enterprise subunits, return on sales, return on equity, sales position, and because this environmental construct in itself is not strongly related to performance, it can thus be defined as a pure moderator which modifies the relationship between the intensity of experience and performance. So for MNEs facing greater environmental complexity, the positive effects of the intensity of experience on financial returns and sales position are stronger. H5A is therefore supported. Unlike intensity of experience, diversity of experience does not have a stronger contribution to performance when operating in a more complex environment. Thus, this finding rejects H5B. To sum it all up, in a more hostile environment, both intensity and diversity of experience accumulated in the local market become more valuable to foreign operation performance. Second, within a more dynamic environment, the diversity of experience, that is participation-based experience, is found to have a stronger contribution to performance than time-based experience. Third, in a more complex environment, the intensity of experience or time-based experience appears to have a more fundamentally positive impact on performance. In terms of the control variables, cultural distance is found to have a significant and negative influence on all four performance measures, while interestingly, organizational size in terms of number of employees is negatively related to performance measures. And finally, equity status is found to be non-significant in relation to overall performance. One can easily apply the findings of this paper to the experience of Magna International Inc., a Canadian-based multinational enterprise that entered the transition economy of China in the 90s, largely on the premise of the shared size of the Chinese market and the largely untouched automotive manufacturing sector. Magna entered the Chinese economy through a joint venture to appease their liability of foreignness. Today, Magna has grown from 4 to 68 manufacturing and assembly plants and 14 engineering and product development and sales facilities in China with a total of 23,600 employees. No doubt, the 3 decades in China would have provided an intense, that is the length, and diverse experience for the company. This intensity and diversity of experience would significantly influence its success in a Chinese market that has the propensity to be hostile, dynamic, and complex. The environmental variables discussed in the findings.
Due to Magna's success in the transition economies such as China, an economy like Albania could be an attractive market to engage in FDI due to the country's natural resources. Therefore, if Magna wants to be successful in investing directly in a transition economy such as Albania, for example, it is important for the multinational firm to understand the institutional framework of the host country. As in the case where formal constraints do not help in times of uncertainty, informal constraints could play a huge part in the success of the multinational firm. Magna should also try to cultivate a good business relationship amongst the local stakeholders of the country to reduce its liability of foreigners. By employing local suppliers of raw materials for its production or diversifying its production parts in different regions of the country to increase its market presence. Lastly, to avoid a high chance of failure in operating in Albania, Magna could or should identify and understand the cultural difference between its culture and the host countries to reduce its liability of foreigners.
In conclusion, we now know that the relationships among experience, environment, and performance in the transition economies such as China is very complex and multidimensional. The intensity and diversity of such host country experience enhances international expansion performance, but it's also moderated by the environmental hostility, dynamism, and complexity. Overall, this study indicates that diverse host country experience gained in such transition economy like China led to a higher performance and international expansion. Thank you.